I'm moving furniture. Was it really bright behind me? Was it too bright?
A little bright.
Yeah, I'm trying to change
You're
my...
live.
Oh.
Hello, and welcome to our webinar on emergencies in activism, strategies for managing mental health and medical crises and activism work. I hope everybody can hear me. Welcome to our webinar. This is brought to you by Frontline Wellness United. Frontline was founded in response to the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. Our mission is to support activists who work in social and environmental justice. We want to connect them with medical and mental health care. We're always in need of more volunteers, so if you're interested in becoming a part of our work, visit us at www.frontlinewellness.org. My name is Robin Chancer. I am a clinical social worker and mental health therapist. I have experience in a variety of settings, including hospitals, clinics, legal offices, and outpatient centers. I have specialized experience working with recent immigrants from Latin America, many of whom have been asylum seekers or unaccompanied minors. This work often focuses on healing from trauma and depression, which is why I wanted to lead this webinar. I've worked with victims of war crimes and gang violence, survivors of torture, and many others. I'm going to let Taggart introduce himself. Taggart Long is here as well to help us with the medical side of things. Can you hear us okay?
Yes. And is it working? So my name is Taggart Long, and I got involved with Frontline Wellness after Standing Rock, and I currently work with the St. Louis City Fire Department as a firefighter and paramedic, and also do training for the fire department and on my own to civilians and protesters who are interested in this kind of work. And I'm here to help answer any questions about if anyone's gone to a previous class of mine or anything else they want to know about dealing with medical situations and protests. And so we're going to sort of be a team and handle this in the way that as a team for the different, so what's happening during a protest, both sort of emotionally and physically and mentally. That's it.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Our objective today then is to talk about when to do what in terms of emergency situations. What should I do right away and then as things unfold? Now, much of what we know about this, we know as a result of research that happened in the aftermath of 9/11. 9/11 actually taught us a great deal about trauma. One area of research studied those who participated in debriefing sessions right after the event. So therapists and other kind of counselors would get people in a room and they would do a group that they would call critical incident stress debriefing, where they would have people talk about what had happened, process the emotions. And it was thought to be the standard of care at the time. But in fact, those who participated fared worse than those who did not. We still have much to learn about why that is, but it appears that encouraging trauma survivors to talk about the incident too soon afterward does more harm than good. So this shifted our perspective quite a bit, especially because this seems to be particularly true for emergency personnel and first responders, people who are trained to delay emotional response. If we encourage them to dive into the emotions they're experiencing at the wrong time, this can cause them to dysregulate. So this helped inform how we respond to a crisis, to an emergency or traumatic situation. Instead of focusing on the emotion, the focus has shifted to psychological first aid, as it's called. So let's use an example. Say you're at a protest and the crowd and the police clash. Violence breaks out, tear gas is released, and chaos ensues. You notice a person who appears to be very upset and or in shock. I always look to see if they need medical care, but if it looks like they do not, maybe they're traumatized by what they witness, I focus on elements of psychological first aid. So the first thing we want to do is promote safety. Safety is always the first priority, which might be common sense, but it's not in the back of our minds. We want to initiate contact in a way that makes them feel safe. So in a non-intrusive way, in a compassionate way, we want to help them feel as safe as possible, and we might say that. We want to get the person out of danger, scan the environment to make sure that they are currently safe, and let them know that I'm here to keep you safe. And the next thing we want to do is to promote calming. And we might do this through grounding, stabilization, any kind of comfort. We want to use a steady, calm voice. Usually, our main goal is to be a non-anxious presence so that they can sort of anchor onto that. You might maintain neutral body language. The person probably needs help coming back to the room. Their mind might be on what just happened or might be going in a million directions of what is about to happen. We want to help them come back to where they are right now. So you can make statements about the environment they're in, like, this is the medic tent. We're off the street now. These are medical professionals and other helpers. You might point out elements of the environment that are soothing, like, this room is quiet. Here's a soft chair. Would you like some water? Help them be mindful of what's going on around them. That's what grounding skills are, focusing on our sensory experience in a way that is soothing. Then we want to gather information on the person's needs and priorities. We might assume what their priorities are, but usually they're not what we assume. So you might think that they need a jacket, but they're focused on their lungs. They're worried about whether they breathed in the tear gas, for example. So whatever is their first priority, we want to try to figure that out and focus on that. Maybe they're thinking about somebody else who's still out there, and maybe we want to go search for that person, figure out what's happening there. So meet their basic needs and focus on the practical assistance, not necessarily their emotional well-being. And then we also want to focus on self-efficacy. When someone's been through a trauma, often the most devastating part of it is the fact that they feel helpless. They feel like something just happened to them and they didn't have any control over it. So focusing on what they've done well, if you can notice anything they've done well, or offer them coping ideas so that they can feel a little more in control of the situation, that can help quite a bit. So you might encourage them to do some deep breathing. You might notice ways that they have already done something brave or courageous. You did a great job getting out of that situation, or you did the right thing by reaching out to me, or you helped somebody else. I saw that. You were very brave. Excuse me. Somehow you have gotten yourself here. You've survived this. You've done something right. If we notice something that they have done, it helps them feel that they have a little more power. And then we want to promote connectedness. We want to help connect them to social supports. If they have other people around them who they know, great. If you can make a plan for who they will go to for support after this, that would be great too. Maybe we connect them to a counselor in their area. Maybe we focus on somebody at home that they can call as soon as possible. Find supports for them moving forward so that they don't feel alone when they leave you. And the last thing we want to do is to instill hope and protect from further harm. We might say things like, this is over now. We made it through this. That incident that you might still be reliving, it's actually over now. We made it through that. We're gonna get through this, and now we're gonna focus on the next moment. That sort of thing. Those are the immediate elements of psychological first aid. I'm going to hand it over to Taggart to talk about the medical side of things because that's not my area of expertise.
Before we do that, I'd like to ask a question from the audience. I believe her name is Soraya. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Asks, what does deregulate mean in this scenario?
Oh, sure. That's a great question. Dysregulate is sort of a clinical jargon word, I realize, which is used to describe when we emotionally get out of control, out of sync with ourselves. Most of the time we're using our brains to keep ourselves organized emotionally. Our thoughts and our emotions are all kind of neatly in their place, and we figure out what to do about them because we have our frontal lobe helping us do that. If something takes the rug out from under us psychologically, if we feel completely overwhelmed to the point that we're unable to cope, we call that dysregulating, where I no longer feel like I have any sort of agency over my thoughts, my emotions. They're taking control of me. I don't feel like I can handle them. I feel like I'm totally overwhelmed. And that's sort of the definition of a trauma. It's something that overwhelms our ability to cope. So when we feel like I can't handle my emotions, I can't handle my thoughts, we start to kind of break down psychologically. We call that dysregulating. Okay, great. Well, maybe I'll go ahead and pass it on to Taggart then if we don't have any more questions. Hope I answered that one.
I think you did. Okay. I want to encourage the questions. It's really helpful for focusing our conversations. So please, that was a good question, and ask any other ones that you'd like. So I'm going to talk about sort of the medical aspect of and the situational aspect of dealing with, if, for example, the different things that can happen at a protest. And this, to continue along the same lines, I know that oftentimes folks have concern with dealing with the different gases and pepper sprays and different chemicals used at protests. And I think it would be, so we'll just continue that same line that Robin started and talk about that. So if you have any questions that are specific about into a protest or about this, you can ask them. But I'm going to sort of go along that line of what to do, at least in that case. And it sounds sort of like a lame way of talking about it, to say that the first thing to do is sort of to be prepared for the situation and to take preventative measures. That seems like a cop-out answer whenever I hear it, but it is actually very, very important to know what you're getting into, and to know, I mean, sometimes you're not prepared and you don't know, but sometimes there are signs developing at a protest or in a situation that you can read and sort of understand that things are happening. And sometimes there aren't, and there's not something that you can do about it. But certainly I think people should go prepared. For example, you're not wearing, contacts, because it's once you have sort of a pepper spray or gas on your contact lenses, then you have to take them out. Otherwise it's really, really painful, and it's really difficult but you can't put them back in. So if that's your one way of seeing, then you could sort of be in kind of a tricky situation. I think it's also, so there's several things we can talk about with that in terms of reading the situation. And I say talk about because I'm always usually talking to people, but since it's a computer, it's weird. But what you can do is that's part of the reading the situation and understanding if that's something that you want to try to brave. And I shouldn't say brave, because it's a good decision to not do it if you, for example, if you have asthma, or if you have any sort of medical conditions that could really put you in danger. I think it's important to recognize that, to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. A lot of folks, if they can, they wear more clothing than they maybe would. If it's very, very cold out, it's easy, but if it's a hot day, we don't want people passing out from heat stroke or heat exhaustion or things like that. But just having a layer of protection over your skin can be very helpful, and you can then remove the layer. Of course, it's still getting into your body. It can still get on you, but having a layer protecting you and people can do gas masks and goggles and bandanas, but just a full layer of clothing can be very helpful. And then after the situation, if you're able to remove that clothing, you've increased your chances of feeling better sooner. And so those are some of the preventative aspects I think are important to talk about. And again, if you have questions along that line, we can talk about that more. And I think I also want to, there's some confusion usually with different gases. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff that people invent to make each other uncomfortable. And some of the ones that are used, CS gas, CN gas, and then also sort of the pepper spray line of products. And it's important to understand that the gases aren't really gas in the sense that we usually understand them. They're aerosol. They take the powder and compress it into a container that when it's released, it's tiny, 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 tiny bits of powder that's going everywhere. And what's important for understanding that is just so people understand that this is something that you have to get off of you, and that it's in the air. And most of the time, for example, as a firefighter, when I think about smoke, I think about getting low and trying to get down away from it. But this is something that will descend onto the ground. So actually getting low is as helpful as getting high and on top of something, because this is a tiny, tiny product that will eventually, in my experience in the real life sort of situation, you can't really, when it's affecting you, you're not thinking along those lines. But it's important to know that just getting down, like they would say, if it was a smoky building, as we teach kids how to get out of a house or something, that's not going to be as helpful, and it can be stirring this up, and you just need to get the product off of you. different people explain and have experiences with pepper spray and CS gas, and they explain it in different ways. But I think I just want to just say this: my feeling that when I experienced the CS or the CN gas, whichever one it was, is that it was at a desire to cough was uncontrollable, and it felt like there was no air, and that you just didn't want to breathe, and that there was like a crushing chest pain, sort of. And I say that because I want folks to understand that it's a horrible experience, which I guess is probably assumed. But if that you're coming into it and you have an experience, to realize that that there's seconds in there that people think, for example, for the gas, that they'll never breathe again, or for pepper spray that they'll never see again. You know, now the pepper spray is a little bit different. Now, pepper spray, if you're in the same room as someone who gets sprayed with pepper spray, it's annoying. You can smell it and it's annoying, but it's not really the same thing. If you're outside and someone, 20 yards away from you gets sprayed by pepper spray, it's not usually incapacitating for you. But the person who has been sprayed, oftentimes what folks they'll be very, very concerned, and later they'll talk about how their eyes are burning so bad, they're quite certain that they'll never see again, or their eyes are burning off. And then they're also just the pain that happens with it when it gets everywhere. So it's this oily pepper product that basically is just trying to get into your pores and causing immense pain. So again, I talk about that so that way that can be a reassuring, even though Robin talked about this, that the prevention is most important, in this case, but then also the kindness that one can demonstrate to somebody who's suffering is the first thing that I would do if I went to someone and was trying to help them. And so even though that is, is what something that Robin talked about, and psychologically and medically speaking, that is also the most important part of it. And letting them know that you are there to help them, and that you want to get them safe, and that you also, if you are carrying, if you're carrying water, and if you're prepared to help them, that, letting someone know and reassuring them that that's something that you're able to do. And you can ask and identify yourself if you can, and ask if they would like assistance. And so if they want assistance, which they usually do, and some people will be experienced and have had this happen before, and will be maybe a little bit more approachable and easily sort of they can be explained what's going on or who you are, and they understand it, and so they'll understand sort of the situation, and they're more prepared for what's going on, and they'll accept help, I think, usually pretty easily. They know kind of the way it works. I think it's also important to understand that some people will be there for the very, very first time. And in that case, then it's going to take a little bit more reassuring and talking about, to let them know that that they will be. You never promise anything, but saying things like, this usually gets better, and this is the way we handle it. And those are the things I'm going to go through right now. So again, a little bit more preventative, or if you're there as a provider, someone who's providing care, and you see this happening, I think you have to then consider if you're going to be better help, maybe leaving that area if you can and coming back in as helping, or if you're going to then, receive the same sort of treatment that the person you're going to try to help is. So if you're not prepared with masks, if you're not prepared with goggles, then you have to consider the fact that you're not going to be as helpful, because you'll be treating yourself. But if you're able to then go into the situation, breathing as little as you can is helpful. So if a gas canister is launched near you and near the people around you, I think saying very quickly, it's basically immediate, though. It's amazing how quickly it's painful. But if you can prepare people, you can tell them, hold your breath, and then you want to get away from it. Closing your eyes as tight as possible can help with the pepper spray and the gas, to try to avoid having those products enter into your eyes. That's such a debilitating thing, not being able to see where you are, and there's people running around and it's loud. So people want to open their eyes. It's just very, very painful if they do, and then you get more stuff in your eyes. So getting out of the area is an important aspect. It's treating somebody while they're still immersed in gas or going to get sprayed again very soon is not super helpful. So encouraging the person to leave the area, and if possible, and depending on what the situation is, but if getting the person into a safe spot and reassuring them, and then begin with the treatment. And we'll talk about that. Hopefully the person won't be wearing contacts, because they'll have to remove those right away, which could be a very difficult thing to do. And you'll have to clean your glass if you're wearing glasses, as I would, if because you don't want to put them back on your eyes. And there's a little bit of controversy and difficult with rinsing, because there is an element that will sort of expose it to your body. But from people who have experienced it many times and been treated many ways, they assure me that the best way that they've ever experienced is just copious, lots and lots of water. So there is an initial sort of like pain with it spreading around, and but cold water of just rinsing. And so obviously the eyes are what's going to be hurting them, but it's something that's going to have to be rinsed everywhere, because it will get everywhere. A lot of folks experience pain as it's dripping down and then exposing, going to other places. So if you can learn and practice, which one of the things that we do when we teach this with Frontline Wellness is practice rinsing out eyes and rinsing out the body, so that way we can avoid it dripping and spreading as much as possible. Obviously the clothes need to be removed, and you can do that as carefully as you can. There's been different ways of doing that. You don't want to then spread it, clean off yourself, and then spread it right back onto your face. So sometimes people just immediately remove their clothes if they can. And that way, if they're getting rinsed off, they won't have to then pull their shirt off over their head again. Some will just, if they can, they'll just leave their clothes on until they get to a place like a shower or whatever, and they'll just take their clothes off in the shower, because these people need to shower. They need to completely remove it and wash with soap and water as thoroughly as possible. You're gonna want to wash your clothes separately, and you but they can be washed. They are usable. Again, this is a product that can be removed. I just wouldn't wash it with my baby's clothes or something. So excuse me. And let me think if there's anything else. So I know there's oftentimes one we'll see the people throwing the canisters, or taking those back, and that's something that has been effective in getting the canister away from an area. It also can be very dangerous, because the canisters can explode, and they can be worse. They can be very hot. People can have burned themselves by trying to do that. Once you have it on your hands, you just can't touch your face, which is a hard thing to do, because you're just going to want to naturally rub your eyes, but you're just taking that product and putting it back in your eyes over and over again. And I'm trying to think. I was hoping I was going to watch the computer and see if people are asking questions as I'm talking, but no one has yet, which is fine. And that's sort of that's talking about those specific cases of the gas and the pepper spray, and how we handle that. And we can. Boy, I don't know, Robin, do you have more you want to add about that? Should we go on to the
Sure.
question?
Yeah, I think one of the important points in what you're saying is that if you can be prepared, that's even better. And psychologically, it's true too, that if we go into a situation with just some sense of what to do, even if it sounds like common sense, we're less likely to panic. And the panic is often the worst part of experience like this. You start to think, I'm never gonna see again, I'm never gonna breathe again, I'm gonna die, this is gonna get worse. And that is what makes the fear from manageable to completely unmanageable. But if you go in thinking, even if this happens, I'm not gonna die, I will breathe again, I will see again, I have to call on the back of your mind to help you survive it and know that that you don't have to panic. That really is one of the keys, I think, to the level of trauma that you might experience when you go through like this. And that's what we're trying to do with psychological first aid too, is to help bring down the panic, help people's emergency alarm systems in their bodies start to calm down. Because when you go into fight or flight, you start experiencing all kinds of psychological symptoms and physical symptoms as a result, and in addition to what you've already gone through. So if you start panic and then you go into fight or flight, you start to experience really scary things, like your heart racing out of control, your breathing feeling like it's not working for you. You might get lightheaded, you might feel nauseated, you might feel cold, shake. All kinds of symptoms can happen as a result of the fight or flight response, in addition to the symptoms you're having from maybe the tear gas or whatever it is that's happened. And it can be hard to distinguish which is which and what you need to worry about and what you don't need to worry about. So if you go in with some kind of idea of what's normal and what you do or don't need to worry about, then it's less likely that all of the cascade of panic incidents would happen. Often when you're giving someone psychological first aid, we do as well offer a lot of reassurance about the symptoms, because people are often very scared by their symptoms. This is true when someone's having a panic attack as well. They're scared of what their body's going through because it feels totally crazy and it feels like something unlike you've ever experienced before, usually. And you might really think that you're dying or think that you're going crazy. A lot of people go to the emergency room because of the fight or flight panic response. So if we can reassure people that your body is doing this as a result of feeling so scared, you're in fight or flight, this will calm down. This is normal. It is normal to experience all these things. We're going to breathe. We're going to help you soothe yourself. We're going to help you calm down. We're going to help you be safe. Then people can start to feel that, in a few minutes, maybe a few more minutes, things start to change. Their heart starts to get a little better, the heart rate's better, maybe their chest pain starts to get better, the breathing starts to get better, and then they know that, okay, I am actually okay. It's not an emergency anymore. So that reassurance, that education of what's normal and what to expect can be a huge help for people as well when they're going through something like this.
So I'd like to cut in for just a moment to let people know, in case they didn't know, upper right-hand corner of the YouTube screen during the live broadcast, you can go in there and write questions or comments, and the speakers can see them. And even if they can't, I'm here to keep an eye on that and to let them know if you guys have any questions. So please do put in any questions that you might have or any comments that you'd like the speakers to see in that top chat in the upper right-hand corner of the YouTube screen. Thanks very much. Thank you, Robin.
Oh, sure. Thank you. If we do have any questions, that's great. If not, we can continue talking about questions we've gotten in the past about how to handle emergency situations or just handling the emotional repercussions of doing activism work, because this right now is an extremely difficult time for most people who are working in social justice or environmental justice. We're dealing with emergency after emergency, and every day feels scarier and scarier for a lot of people, I think. So there's a lot to talk about there too, in terms of how we maintain, for example, our emotional well-being over the long term. How do you maintain your sense of things are going to be okay when things are not okay right now? We can't see any sign of them becoming any better anytime soon. If you go through multiple experiences like this of being in a situation where you feel frightened and threatened, how do you keep yourself functioning? How do you survive this emotionally? And so I thought I might say a little bit to that too, because it is a big problem right now. And it's very hard to tell. Our old coping skills might not be working. Our old coping skills may have been to think things like, in the long run, things are going to be okay. Or if we keep at it, we will eventually meet our goals. Or someone's going to be on our side. And if all we have to do is just stay in the game, and eventually we're going to get somewhere. But right now, I'm not sure those coping skills are helping a lot of people. I'm hearing from a lot of people who are saying, all I keep seeing is that we're on a decline, and there doesn't seem to be anybody on our side. It doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere. It seems like we're putting in an enormous amount of years, and all we're getting is more and more crackdown. So a couple things that come to mind for me in trying to help us do this in a sustainable way come from research on this topic, but also on things like vicarious trauma, where people often experience traumatic symptoms as a result of hearing about other people's traumas, which we're doing a lot. It seems like there are more and more traumas happening all the time that we're hearing about, at least. And it's common that people might start to experience symptoms themselves based on what they're hearing day in and day out from their friends, their family, their loved ones, the news. So one thing we know about that is that it's not so much the severity of what you witness, it's the number of things you witness that determines your psychological well-being and your symptoms. For, say, people who are doing activism work or first responders or therapists, you need to pay attention to your number of people in your caseload, the amount of hours you work, the number of crises you respond to in a given month. If you exhaust yourself, you're more vulnerable to symptoms. You're more vulnerable to kind of breaking apart psychologically. So it is important to pace yourself. It's really important to take breaks, to give yourself mental vacations, to renew yourself in whatever way works for you. If you start to feel some of those signs that I'm not doing okay, going back to the question about dysregulating, that can often look like feeling a lot of anxiety, or not sleeping well, or not eating well, or not being able to function like you want to, or not being able to get these things out of your mind when you're going through your daily life. It can mean falling into depression, reliving a lot of what you've experienced, because those intrusive symptoms. If you keep reliving the memories, reliving the feelings, if you feel kind of psychologically or emotionally numb, that you're detached from yourself or from the world, those can all be signs that things are really starting to wear on you, and it's time to give yourself a break. We have to do this in a sustainable way. So not overdoing it really is important, and also finding community, making sure that you have community around you of like-minded people who can buoy you up when you're starting to feel that you're falling, people who share your worldview and your commitment, and you can pass the baton to them sometimes if you need to. We're in this together, and we know that, and it gives us a sense of buffer around us that I'm not having to manage all this by myself. I've got people I can lean on, people I can talk to, people who understand. I would say those things are probably the most important in helping us maintain this work over the long term. All right. I'm wondering if any more questions have come in. If not, we might think about going ahead and finishing up. I'm not seeing any on my screen, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Taggart, did you have any last things you wanted to talk about before we end?
I think you've done a good job about explaining to them what the sort of the initial stuff to do, explain to folks, and again, I sort of reassure that that's really the most helpful thing. Just trying to help someone out is really the best thing to do. I think people often fear, messing someone up, and it's harder to do that than we think. Just listening to the person and encouraging them. It's harder to make that mistake than one thinks. So I think after that, it gets pretty specific into the different situations and how to treat this. We could spend a lot of time, like years and years of medical school, to talking about every possible scenario. Yeah. So that, I just saw a question. I'm going to read it really quickly while I'm sitting here. Taggart, can you talk about rinses for, I'll read it out loud. Taggart, can you talk about rinses for chemical weapons that contain things other than water? I have some training on this, but hoping others on the stream could benefit from the discussion. Yes. So, unfortunately, with the number of, I don't know how to say this, is it fortunate or unfortunate, the number of times in recently that people have been sprayed with awful chemicals, there have been people who have experienced it and experienced relieving the symptoms in many ways. And I've met with people in here in St. Louis and in Standing Rock, and there's also, of course, research that one can do on the internet. And we talk about that. We have a lot of these resources available on the website, frontlinewellness.org. And we actually bring up this conversation about different ways of going about treating rinses. And there's a couple that are people who use vinegar as a means of helping not suffer from it initially, but with vinegar soaked bandanas. And then that's the one. And then the other one is the milk of magnesia sort of way of rinsing folks. And so it's very common, and it's something that happened in Standing Rock, and it happens in St. Louis, and you still see people covered, and so afterwards they have sort of like white all over them. And so that's definitely a common tactic that some people believe works the best. Through my experience and speaking with people who have experienced this a number of times, that is not a technique that I personally recommend or use anymore. I think carrying with an individual, if you're putting together a pack, for example, whoever asked this question, if you're carrying something with you, water and a bottle with soapy water in it. Oh, can you grab my backpack? I'll show them how I carry. Thanks. A bottle that has a soapy water mixture and then lots of water is what I found to be, and what I have been told is the most helpful. It's the copious amounts of water. And there's a couple of reasons. One, if the milk of magnesia is putting another product into someone. And the theory behind it was that you're fighting an acid with a base, and there's a relief. But there's also, evidence is the right word, but conversations that have happened that it's actually putting something else in your eyes, and that it's not, and that the relief is just getting it out. And so I personally we have found that, using water and then soapy water to help, because the soap helps grab the oils in order to remove the product. And I should have been prepared, but I wasn't, but I'm going to open up my backpack here and get the product that I carry. And it's basically a bottle that has a nozzle on it so I can spray it. Sorry, I should have been better prepared. So I have a bottle of see that this is a nozzle that I really like, and it sprays enough that it's allowing water to come out, but it's not so much that it's going to be just all gone in 1 second. And then I also have one that I see right on top of it there. Can I see it? Soapy water, and this is just water. And so the soapy water, I will spray over somebody. And again, this is a product that doesn't, it's a natural product and doesn't hurt eyes. You're still spraying someone in the eyes, but it's not a chemical irritant. But getting it everywhere, it will bind to some of the oil and the pepper sprays. And then when you're rinsing with the water, it'll help rinse it. Another sort of interesting aspect of the milk of magnesia, which folks have talked to me about, is that it's very obvious who has been sprayed, because they are now covered with white stuff. And that can be a problem for people who are then trying to sort of blend back into society and, and not want to be identified by police or whomever is spraying them. And it is a way of sort of marking yourself. And a lot of folks have turned down and talked to me about that as one of the main reasons why they didn't want to be sprayed. They didn't want to be rinsed with that, because they wanted to sort of be rinsed, cleaned up, and then sort of go back into the town without having everybody recognize where they were, where they had just been. And I don't think out of shame, out of protecting themselves. So I think that's another, I think it's important to recognize folks and their desire to not be identified in that way. If it were 1,000 times more effective, then I think that could be a conversation to have with them and say, listen, we can, let's do this and we'll try to get you clean afterwards. But because it hasn't been proven to me or to anyone that I know beyond a reasonable doubt that it is 1,000 times more effective, or even or more effective at all, that doesn't seem to be worth it to mark someone when you can just clean them the other way. I'm looking at the question. I think I hit the question. If I didn't, please write another question. If I missed part of the topic.
I was through a back channel. I was asked if you could demonstrate, without actually putting liquid in your face, how you wash the pepper spray out of somebody's eyes.
I like how you added that without putting liquid in my face. I wouldn't have asked it that way. I would have said, would you please demonstrate in front of everybody how to rinse that? Yes, I can. My son, who I think needs something from me that I've been ignoring, happens to be here. Would you let me demonstrate this in front of them?
Sure.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll have that. Sorry. So stand right here. Let's get in front of the camera. Keep coming closer. This is my son, Lyndon. You want to say hello?
Hi.
Hi.
And so the idea would be we'd be on the ground, which is a more comfortable position for somebody who can't see, because just the idea of walking down, it's sort of natural for folks to gravitate towards the floor or the ground because they can't see, and so it's a natural position. What's helpful is, an important part of it, if people are running or if the folks who are spraying you are approaching, sometimes it's more helpful to get out of the way, and that is a real a brave thing for someone to say. If you were to say to them, I know you can't see, we're not in a safe spot, please come with me to the side and I can help you there. And that's a very brave thing for someone to, and then again, you talk about all the things that Robin we've already talked about. Is there anybody with you? Can I find someone who did you come here with anybody? We can go through all those things as we're walking off and getting a safe space, because then eventually if you can get them on the ground so they can feel more comfortable. You can do this with someone standing up and quickly and running or whatever, but it's just my experience that people, they just want to not be standing up when they can't see. So he's standing up. So I said that all just to show that this isn't exactly it. And he wouldn't be smiling and chilling out, right? This is somebody who's panicky and very upset and they can't see you. And so it's a much, this is not like this calm child here. You act like you normally act so that way they can see how to do it. Nothing, I'm just joking. So, okay, so what I'm gonna do is, so if he had been sprayed in his face, let's say the more pepper spray guidelines, I would see if I can get him to lean forward. I carry around a towel, which I would put underneath his chin, or even ask him to put underneath his chin. That would grab some of the product and help it from going down. And obviously the groin area is a horrible area to have chemicals. And that's what happens oftentimes. That's an area that's not in pain, and then we spray them and all that stuff rinses right down, and all of a sudden we have pain in two areas now. So if you can catch a lot of that product where that doesn't drip off to the ground, and then you can catch it in a towel, that'd be super beneficial for the for whomever you're helping. And so the thing I'm gonna do is I want to try to spray. I don't want the product that's on this side of his face to then run into this side of his face. I don't need to spread it, right? And I don't, so I'm going to actually try to think about the faces. Robin, can you hear me if I turn my face like that still?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure I wasn't making any. Okay, so you can still hear me? Is this
Yeah,
working?
no problem.
Okay. So I want to think about the face in terms of like half and half. And sometimes there's an initial just like spray all over, you know, and that's fine. That is helpful, you know, to just like spray right over and then take a towel and wipe it over. But when you're really trying to, so I would do that with the soapy water, just initially just try to get as much as you can off and then use that towel and get it off and then hold the towel. And then when you're trying to then clear out the eyes, which is kind of how I took the question, but maybe that wasn't the way it was supposed to be taken, is I would turn the head this way and have him leaning forward. So he's holding the towel here, he's leaning forward, and then I'm aiming my spray to hit here and then spray it that way. And I'll do it for that eye. And then I would, you know, encourage him and say, okay, I'm gonna spray your right eye now. You don't ever want to surprise anybody, you don't want to trick them. You want to tell them what's happening and tell them why you're doing it and all that. And so then I would tell them, you know, okay, we're gonna lean to your right, and I'm gonna spray your right eye now. And it's basically impossible to open your eyes. But what I try to encourage is I will say, try not to scrunch as hard, because I want to hope that he's gonna help, that's gonna help me be able to open his eyes to spray it out of his eyes. Because I'm going to actually, so I kind of feel like I have to do it right now. It's okay, so it would look like this. So I would do all that explaining, and he would now tell, okay, I'm gonna open your eyes. And so what I would do is open his eyes. Some folks will pinch both ways. Some will just grab like this. You almost go into the eye, and then you can just do the one. That's often easier than this way. But you know, when you practice on your friends and family, you can find out what works best for you. And so I would go like this, and then I would take this at about this distance. You think I should do it? And we don't have a towel on the ground. So I would do it like this, and I'm gonna spray you. I'd go like this, and I would just go like that very quickly, but I would do it harder and longer. And then what I would do is I'd be aiming right for here, and I'd brush out, and I would spray it. If this wasn't the room with our computer, and I would do this for you, but that wouldn't be a very good idea. So I would be spraying really hard and spraying out that way. I keep the bottle away, and I want people to keep the bottle away because I don't want, when I teach this, I don't want anybody to jab someone in the eye with their bottle. So that's why I say, you know, stay away from it. It's not like a magical distance. It's just making sure that you don't accidentally spray this person that you're helping with the eye. So I'm going like this. Okay, I'm gonna spray. You all ready? Here we go. I spray quickly, push it all out. And then I would go to this side, and I would do it over and over again until they have some relief, and that would take a while. They're gonna want to then take their hands and go like that. So that's a problem. They have to not do that. That's why holding that towel can help. And then we can wash their hands off, get another towel, and do it over and over again. I could even add, do the soap again. So this is, because it's all over the place, and it's really hard to get off. But this could help the person then go from this spot here to walking a few blocks away and getting into a more safe situation. Or, as oftentimes very brave, in my experience with brave water protectors, they go right back to doing what they were doing. And so this is a spray, rinse, and then they're able to see well enough to continue their protest. And I think that explained it. Rob, do you think that was covering it enough? Okay, I see more questions. Sorry, it's annoying if I sit here and read questions. Other tips we're dealing with. Okay, I think some of these are for you.
Can't see him, that'd be great.
Okay, so are there any upcoming in-person trainings? Soraya asked that, and there can be. We do organize trainings. There, I think maybe there's some way of speaking with you individually and where you live, because if you live in St. Louis, then the answer is yes, I could do that anytime. If you live someplace else, to maybe help either coordinate someone with you or figure something out. The next question from Jordan: are the tips for dealing with traumatized individuals the same for both close loved ones and strangers? I feel it's hard to remain calm and be objective when it's someone you know. That's a very good point. The most scared I've ever been in my life was when my other son, not this one, was choking when he was an infant. And so I can identify with that. And I've helped strangers, and I care very much about strangers and what I do. But there is something about caring for a loved one that kind of changes it for some reason. And I think it's an important lesson in recognizing that calm is going to be important. It's helpful for me to recognize that. And that's how I sort of handled the situation. I thought, I mean, all this happens, like, you can get nervous and calm down very quickly. It can only take a matter of a second, but it seems like an eternity in your brain. And I thought, what would I do at work? And I took him out of his high chair where he'd been stuffing way too much food in his face. And I turned him upside down. I gave him a back blow, and the food came out. And then he was fine. And he stuffed more food in his face and is doing fine. So so having that ability to calm yourself down, not only are you demonstrating what you want other people to do, who are maybe watching you, I think you're able to make better decisions and able to be a better provider. And it is not a lack. And I don't think one can do it without being cold. One can be calculated and careful and calm without being cold. I don't want people to think that's a sort of a binary thing. You either care and you're demonstrating compassion, or you're like, sort of a robotic approach to it. There's definitely a balance of saying that this is a very important thing for you, that it's very important that I help this person, that I help you, and I care very much about you, and I very much want you to get you better, and this is how I'm going to do this. So that's how I'm going to start the answer, but I suspect Robin you have stuff to add to that?
Yeah, those are great points. And I can totally, it's a wonderful question, because it's so true. When we love someone, we experience what they experience, and our emotional life is wrapped up in theirs, and it makes sense that we get angry for them and we get upset for them. So it's normal, of course, but it often doesn't really help. And for most people who I've counseled, they will say that they often really hesitate to say too much to their loved ones, because they feel bad, for one thing, burdening them. They don't want to make them upset. And then if they are upset, then they feel like they have to take care of them. They feel like, well, now I have to help you feel better when I'm the one who went through this. So the thing that I say to myself a lot is that they don't need me to get upset for them. They don't need me to get angry for them. That's not going to help them. They need me to focus on them. They need me to be there with them, to ask how they're doing, to focus on what they need. And if I get up for them, then both of us are not really helping each other. There's nothing good that will come from that necessarily. We might feel like we're empathizing, but it might make them feel like we're so I tend to think about
Hey, Robin, I can't hear you anymore.
I think we just lost Robin. Oh, there, she's back.
Oh.
Robin, we lost you for a minute.
We lost you like the last minute of what you said.
Okay, so what's the last thing that you heard me say?
Good question. I was busy trying to figure out if it was my computer, so I suddenly started typing things. Go back like 30 seconds. You're talking about well, it was the same subject.
Sure. So I had talked about how most people who I've counseled don't really want the people around them to get upset for them. Did you hear me say that part?
Yes.
Okay. So what I tell myself is, they don't need me to get upset for them. They don't need me to get angry for them. They need me to be okay, for one thing. They need me to be okay. It needs to shift from how I'm emotionally processing this and be focused on how they are emotionally processing this and how they're doing. If I get upset, then they might feel bad, and they might be sorry they told me. They might feel like they need to take care of me. If I focus on them, then I help ground them. I help stabilize them. I help bring them back. I will help them most if I am calm and I'm focused on them. And I like your point, Taggart, in saying that that's not the same thing as being cold or detached. What I'm doing is just shifting my focus to you. What's on your face? What words are coming out of your mouth? What does your body look like? How do you respond if I say this versus that? How do you normally comfort yourself, and how might I help
Hey, Robin, something's happened again.
do that? Usually, whatever.
So, Robin, your network is a little bit messed up, I think. You just slowed way down for a second, but I think that what you were saying was that you think about what the other person does to comfort themselves in order to help them. And this is, in some ways, this is kind of, seems to me to be an advantage when working with people that you love. If you can keep yourself from getting wrapped up in making this about yourself, and you can keep the focus on the person who's been through the trauma, then you do know this person, so you are able to think of those things that they do to comfort themselves, and what their little quirks are to help them feel stable and strong, which you weren't going to know for a stranger.
Right, that's true.
And I know that this isn't my webinar and I'm just the technical person, but I just wanted to throw this in there that if you're having trouble remembering like where those boundaries are about whether this trauma is your trauma or the other person's trauma, I find the concentric circles of grief care, or of just caring for people that are going through things, as a really good model. Right? So there's the person in the middle of the concentric circles who is, the person who's sick, or the person who just lost a loved one, or the person who just got pepper sprayed. And then outside of that circle are the direct, family and friends who are directly helping that person through whatever they're going through. But those people are also going to need support, because they're focusing on supporting the person in the middle, right? So then their friends and family are then supporting them. And in this way, the concentric circle makes a really nice interdependent web of emotional support. Robin, I wanted to ask you something. This actually goes quite a ways back. We got a message through a back channel asking, hold on, I'm like flipping back through all of these messages.
I'm hoping you can hear me better now.
Yes, I can hear you well now.
Yay.
So hold on. How do you calm someone down if they're like just freaked out about an incident that just happened? They're hyperventilating and you like, they just totally cannot handle.
Yeah, they're just like full on panic mode. So the first thing I often focus on is the hyperventilation, because hyperventilating often makes the rest
Robin, you slow down.
Hyperventilating is so scary that it makes the fear get way worse. So, I don't know. That's how I talk more slowly. So is this any better now?
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I encourage the person to do is a slow, long exhale. So if you're hyperventilating, you're breathing too fast and too shallowly. You're going through your chest, and you feel like you can't get enough air in, but that's because you're not exhaling enough. So I encourage the person to take a long, really long exhale. Often push the air out with their diaphragm. You have to kind of consciously do it if you're in that state. And then when they're ready, take another full deep breath in, hold it for a couple seconds, and then exhale again all the way out. You can also do sort of the old ideas that still work really well, like breathing into your hands or breathing into a paper bag, student CO2 levels balanced a little bit. And when you're no longer hyperventilating as much, everything else starts to fall into place a little bit better. Your thought process feels a little more normal. Your heart rate might get more normal. So focusing on breathing is often the first thing I do. And then I might jump back into those other steps of, okay, so now you can breathe. Now that you can breathe, I'm going to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to say, I'm here to keep you safe. What's on your mind? We're here, we're in this room, help the person come back to the room, all that stuff again. But usually if we can get the breathing a little bit better, it's a lot easier to do the rest of it, the rest of the calming.
May I talk about that a little bit, please?
Sure.
First of all, it's a perfect answer, and it's really good to know. I think that you could teach EMT and paramedic classes, because there's a lot of, you see it, one of my least favorite things to see is people in this profession, whether police or fire or anyone who's handling someone in an emergency situation, nurses at a hospital, although I don't see them do this as often, but is to yell at someone to calm down. And it's very, very common, and it is, in my experience, totally ineffective. And then what you've just done is you've created a situation where you're no longer the patient advocate, you're almost an adversary at that point, because you're yelling at the patient, and then they're like, oh great, so whatever's happening now, I've got somebody else yelling at me. Although that what might be the intention might be good to relay to somebody that this is a situation that we will get out of, and so you can calm down because it's not serious, whatever. That's not what's being conveyed at all. And so I think so I encourage people to think about the words they use and the tone of their voice, and it's very easy to say, it's okay, calm down, and then in your mind that's like this positive thing to say, but the person receiving it is saying, it's not okay, obviously, because I'm having this situation and I can't calm down because I don't really want to be like this. So obviously, so then if they take the time to think about this, which I don't think it's really super conscious, it's more like the subconscious reaction to this person's not on my side. And so what I have learned, and so it's really great to see somebody who is a professional and can explain this. I've learned that breathing is so important, and I think we're going to learn more and more as humans get smarter about breathing, whether it's yoga or meditation, that your sort of body responds to it. So whether that's the fight or flight, you are telling yourself to calm down just by breathing, because by hyperventilating, it's telling your body that there must be something that is going on that's bad. That's why I'm in this situation where my heart's beating quickly and I'm breathing fast. I should be running away from something, or whatever your body's thinking. So I also will talk about and encourage breathing. I oftentimes also I try to be patient, for one thing, because if this is a situation they can calm down from and they are okay, then I don't need to have them think that that I'm in some sort of a rush to help them. And again, even if it's a situation that you sort of want to move along at some sort of pace, one can take usually a few seconds, a minute, whatever, to let the person know that they're on their side and that they are saying, they're saying the encouraging words, all that stuff that we talked about earlier, and to know that they're an advocate. So I want, when folks are approaching somebody that needs help and is in that desperate situation, to think about what you would want, and you probably wouldn't want someone to run over and yell at you to stop, or to calm down. You'd want someone to be on your side and to let you and to help you through this. And so that's kind of what I want to say, which maybe was more negative, but I wanted to say that, and then after that, do all of the things that Robin has already mentioned. Mm-hmm. And that, as my experience, has also been the most helpful. I see some. So, Robin, you have anything else to add? I also see some more questions.
Oh no, I think that was great. I'd say we could take another question.
Okay, I'm going to read this. Jerry, who this makes sense. When I organize nonviolent trainings, I often point out that while we may engage in nonviolent practice at a protest, the police are not going to be nonviolent. So I usually tell them to bring a care package of things that can help in case violent act happens. That's very true. I take, for example, just, I don't know when it was, last weekend, I think it was, when I was somewhere with my boys, and I was there as a street medic, and people asked how I could take my children to dangerous situations, and I think one of them responded that that they've never seen anybody that they're ever with, committing, doing anything violent, but they have had, they have seen the police behave in that way. So that was the effect that my children have seen. And so that would, I think that's what Jerry's talking about, in that, but that's still something that's happening. And I can't surmise every situation that's ever happened, but that is certainly a legitimate question and concern. And then he goes on, can you recommend items that everyone should take to a demo? We could do and then we respond, we should maybe do a specific video on that. And I would be willing to do a video on what I keep in my bag. I think it would take a while to go through my bag, and my bag's a little bit more than I would recommend the average person take. So Jerry, when you say things, you say, i.e. water bottles, soft cloths, an extra t-shirt, Band-Aids, energy bars, you're actually hitting the most important things. I think, it sounds silly, but a lot of help can be, washing someone's injury. So one of the reasons that I don't think I talked about this, one of the reasons why I focus on soap and water is because I have a finite amount of things that I can carry. And I can do a lot with soap and water. Someone's running and they fall and they scratch their hands. They have junk on their hands and they want to eat something. There's a lot you can do with taking soap and water, and a towel. And so I think that's a very, very good start. Extra t-shirt, I guess that's for yourself or for somebody else. Band-Aids are smart. I'd like to take, I take tape and a little roll of gauze that I can cut the gauze into different sizes. And I take a pretty good brand of tape, because I just find that works. It sticks better than Band-Aids, but that's fine. Energy bars are smart. It can help in a lot of different ways. I actually take there's different products. I forget all of their names, but goo, it's sort of something that I can take for somebody who just needs energy right now, especially if there's a diabetic who needs like a sugar right there, as long as they can swallow. And I don't want to do a whole diabetic conversation right now, but so maybe we can do a follow-up on this, and then that way we can go through the bag and I can explain that. But I also will say that on the frontlinewellness.org website, we have a list of supplies under, I think you go to resources, medics kit, recommended equipment and supplies. We have a list, and again, it goes, it's a pretty big list because we're trying to cover everything. I wouldn't say everything, but a lot of the things that you might encounter. There's the different sort of, so if you're on a protest or a march that's going to, in the middle of the summer, and you're walking really far and it's really, really hot, I find that then if I'm at a, sort of a Standing Rock situation where I want to be treating people for days in the cold, those are very different things. So that's an important part of the conversation, is to recognize that you kind of can make it specific to your whatever you're doing. But as a very quick answer, water to drink and a rinse, soapy water, some sort of gauze bandage and some tape can get you, and a towel or t-shirt's good, is a very, very good basic. I add into that a tourniquet or tourniquet-like material, like a triangular bandage, and the knowledge of how to put a tourniquet on. That, again, the triangular bandage is something that's super helpful for, packing a wound, or, using it for any number of reasons. But I was going to get one out, but I said I won't do all that. But putting a tourniquet on a wound, whether wrapping it and not putting a lot of pressure, just enough pressure because it's not a serious wound, can be very helpful. But then if it's a very, very serious extremity wound, putting a tourniquet on is a life-saving and a life-saving technique that I think everyone should know. I think it goes right along with CPR, choking, and tourniquets. And And if you have a triangular bandage, you can make a tourniquet out of lots of things, but carrying around a triangular bandage is a very easy thing to carry around that you can use for lots of different stuff. And you can put on a tourniquet, which is super duper, which is absolutely necessary if someone has that kind of extreme bleeding. So I'm going to read a couple more questions. Okay, so this is good, Robin. Good question. So follow up on this question. What about someone that's very angry? In the past, I've struggled with not wanting to invalidate their anger, but also wanting to help them calm down. That's a very good question.
Yeah,
Robin?
de-escalation. That is a really good question. That's something I think more of us should be talking about. And anyway, I won't go my soapbox about that, but it's really a great question. So if someone's really angry, you're right that you don't is language. So I want to make sure that my body language is neutral. I'm not in an aggressive stance with like my hands on my hips or my arms in the air. But I'm also not in sort of a weaker stance where I'm getting smaller and I'm turning away and I'm not looking at them. Either one of those can make the person feel even more angry. But if I have a neutral stance, so my shoulders are open, my arms are down, I'm looking at them with a neutral face, and then I do a lot of reflective listening. If you've ever learned about active listening, that often means just kind of repeating back what I'm hearing in a way that is friendly and understanding. So if someone's saying, I can't believe this person just did this, they're a total you know what, and I say to them, yeah, okay, so you're really angry about what just happened because this person did this. That makes sense. I totally understand that. That piece is validating to say it makes sense. I can understand where you're coming from here, and maybe repeat back to them what you're hearing them say. You are really angry about XYZ. I can understand that. Yes, what happened there was not okay. I would be angry too if I were you. Let me just let you know I'm with you. You know, I am understanding where you're coming from here. When someone is angry, the first thing they need you to do is listen to them. They need to know that somebody understands. That's not the same thing as saying, I agree with you on every point. It's saying, I, on your turn, trying to say to me, hear them, it often calms them down immediately. Because if you keep repeating, you can let them escalating their tone or they're trying to get you to hear them. They know that, okay, fine, good, this person gets it at least. At least somebody understands me. And then that will start to calm them down a little bit. And then you can start to think about, okay, now, is everybody safe? Do we need to take any other steps? Do you need some help? Do you need a medic? Do you need somebody to talk to? Even though they're responding with anger instead of fear, they might still need help in the same way that somebody in fear does. So is there something that we can do to help you to get through this situation? That way they know you are a friend to them. You're someone on their side. You're not here to make their life harder. You can deal with them being angry and you're not going to get overwhelmed. And then they'll know, okay, great. So I don't have to fight. I'll be okay, even if I'm not getting more aggressive. I'd be curious to know for you, Taggart, if that's kind of how you would approach the situation.
Yes.
Oh, can you hear? Okay.
Yes, I can. Oh, you did a really good job. I can't add to anything. And you have words and a more professional way of explaining things that I've learned. And I have found that sometimes it takes a while to get calmed down. But I have found in most of the time in my experience that people can, when they feel like they have an advocate, they can actually calm down quite quickly. And again, doesn't mean that you agree with everything that you're saying. And usually I have really no idea what someone's talking about because I wasn't there. We were showing up afterwards. And, but to let them know that I'm totally listening to them and I totally want to help them out. can do a lot to calm someone down. And so I didn't really understand what was happening, but I think you call it reflective listening.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right word for it, obviously, and that's what I try to do. So I don't have any of that. I think that's exactly what I have done, and what I think that people should do is let people know that that they're being heard, and then I think if it doesn't work every single time, of course, but my experience is that most of the time, just having someone say that can calm the situation down really quite quickly, and especially if it's contrary to how everybody else has been treating them. So if they're in a situation where it's very aggressive and you're all of a sudden not that way, I think that's a relief for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it can quickly help out. So that that's all I wanted to add to that.
So we have made it past the hour now, and it's time for us to close out this particular webinar. But there's clearly a lot more subjects in this field that we need to be talking about, more questions to answer. The good news is that we're going to have more webinars. This is not the last webinar ever. And so we're really looking forward to seeing more of your questions. If you're watching this video after the live video is over, please do give us your questions and your comments in the comment section, and we will respond to as many as we possibly can in the comments, but also we'll use those for ideas for our future webinars. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Right now, there's not one on your screen if you're watching live, but after this goes onto YouTube in the normal way, I will stick the subscribe button on the screen right about now. So make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit the little bell symbol so that you get notifications when we have new videos come up. And if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you can find out about our in-person trainings, our live trainings, and other events that we're having. You can also go check out our website at www.frontlinewellness.org. So, in closing, Frontline Wellness United is an international medical aid society that provides no-cost medical care, wellness services, and training for social justice activists and nonviolent civil resistance movements. We are a 501c3, and the support we can give to resistance movements and activists depends on the number of volunteers we have. Medical providers in particular. If you're interested in our work and would like to volunteer, please visit our website to contact us or fill out an application. I'd like to add to that we also need other sorts of volunteers. We need more technical people to help me out with the technical side of things. We also need people who can do administrative sort of volunteering work. So whatever your skills are, please come to the website, check us out, fill out a form, and let's do cool stuff together. Thank you very much for joining us for this video, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thanks.